Blake Lively's courtroom collapse sent shockwaves through everyone present, leaving the public and media scrambling to digest what had just happened. It wasn't a minor stumble or a brief moment of weakness. It was the unraveling of everything the world believed about the Hollywood darling. What had started as a routine pretrial session quickly escalated into chaos as a former employee of one of Blake's now-defunct business ventures took the stand and delivered explosive testimony. Blake tried to maintain her composure, claiming a headache and asking to leave, but the judge firmly refused, insisting she remain. As the young woman began revealing the truth, Blake's carefully curated image began to crumble in real time. The courtroom, already tense with anticipation, buzzed with disbelief. The actress, long known for her poised public appearances, was exposed in a way no one had seen before. She had trained herself for difficult questions and uncomfortable moments, but this caught her completely off guard. Her confidence, once seemingly unshakable, started to erode. She attempted to cover her panic with a claim of just a migraine, but her pale face, flushed with anxiety, told an entirely different story. Her eyes darted around the room, seeking an escape that didn't exist, revealing the depth of her unease. The source of this shocking courtroom moment was a former manager from Blake's eco-friendly brand, a venture that had once been praised for its sustainability and ethical mission. What had seemed like a promising initiative had become central to a legal drama that no one could ignore. The employee's testimony painted a starkly different picture of the company and of Blake herself. While the brand had been marketed as a socially responsible project, the truth, according to the former manager, was far less admirable. Blake, instead of being a figurehead or a distant observer, had been deeply involved in the brand's operations. She dictated strategy, controlled the branding, and made critical decisions at every level. Far from the sustainable and ethical image portrayed to the public, the brand had functioned as a money-making machine for Blake, cleverly disguised as a socially conscious initiative. Its real purpose, as the employee revealed, was to elevate Blake's public image, positioning her as Hollywood's eco-friendly face rather than genuinely addressing environmental concerns. As the testimony unfolded, it became clear that Blake's hands were all over the brand's missteps. Micromanaging daily operations and making pivotal business decisions, she had directly contributed to the company's downfall. What had initially appeared to be an innovative venture was exposed as a PR stunt gone awry. The brand, once celebrated as visionary, ultimately collapsed under the weight of its unmet ethical promises. Employees were underpaid, investors were misled, and the mission of sustainability had taken a backseat to reputation management. Blake's reckless choices had resulted in a rapid decline of the venture, leaving chaos in its wake. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as the former manager detailed promises that were never kept, highlighting the gap between the company's public persona and its private reality. The testimony didn't stop at business failures. The former employee revealed a far darker side of Blake's leadership style. Far from the approachable, charming image she cultivated, Blake was described as a micromanager with a volatile temper. Tense interactions, sharp words, and sudden outbursts were part of the daily reality for those who worked under her. The most shocking revelation came when the former employee recounted an incident where Blake allegedly threw a glass of wine during an argument. The glass shattered upon impact, sending shards flying and leaving the employee with a severe cut on her head that required stitches. This wasn't portrayed as a mere accident. It was described as a deliberate act of aggression. After the incident, Blake reportedly left the room, leaving the employee bleeding, confused, and professionally destabilized. The courtroom sat in stunned silence, absorbing the gravity of the allegations. The implications of a testimony went far beyond a failed business venture. It was a story of trust, control, and power, and the collapse of the brand was just the beginning. Blake's public image, carefully constructed over years, faced a harsh reckoning. Allegedly, she had used her position to manipulate, intimidate, and exploit those around her, all while maintaining a facade of charm and competence. The eco-brand, once a symbol of progressive innovation, was revealed to be a vehicle for personal gain, designed to reinforce Blake's status rather than genuinely serve environmental causes. As the courtroom absorbed the details, it became clear that this case was about more than just business ethics. The testimony highlighted the dangers of unchecked power and influence, showing how even celebrated public figures could abuse their positions. Blake's collapse wasn't merely emotional, it was emblematic of a broader unraveling. The actress, who had long been admired for her elegance, charm, and poise, now faced serious questions about her character and integrity. Every carefully orchestrated PR move, every polished appearance, was suddenly seen in a new light, undermined by first-hand accounts of her behavior behind closed doors. For the court, the evidence presented by the former employee was damning. It established a direct link between Blake's decision-making and the failure of the brand, illustrating that the venture's collapse was not a series of unfortunate events, but the result of deliberate choices. Furthermore, the allegations of aggressive behavior raised serious concerns about workplace safety and personal accountability. Blake's public image, long built on sophistication and charm, was being replaced in real time with a narrative of recklessness, control, and potential violence. The courtroom reaction was immediate and profound. Witnesses, jurors, and even the judge struggled to reconcile the image of Blakelively they had known with the portrait painted by the victim. The elegant, composed actress had been replaced by someone capable of manipulation, harsh treatment of subordinates, and actions that endangered others. This wasn't a story about a failed brand. It was about the personal responsibility of those in power and the consequences when ambition and image take precedence over ethics and safety. As the testimony concluded, the scope of Blake's alleged misconduct became undeniable. Her role in the collapse of the eco-brand, her micromanaging tendencies, her aggressive behavior, and the injuries sustained by the employee combined into a portrait of a star whose public persona was drastically at odds with her private actions. For Blake, the courtroom became a stage where her reputation was dissected and dismantled. The implications were enormous, suggesting not only legal ramifications but long-term damage to her standing in Hollywood and public trust. Blakelively's collapse in court wasn't a fleeting moment of vulnerability. It was the unraveling of a carefully curated image and the exposure of behaviors that had long remained hidden. The combination of failed business decisions, allegations of aggression, and the exposure of personal misconduct created a scenario that threatened to redefine her career. From the courtroom floor to the public arena, the fallout from this testimony promised to be lasting and far-reaching, marking a historic moment in the ongoing legal and personal drama surrounding the Hollywood star. Blakelively's actions went far beyond a momentary lapse in judgment. Throwing a glass in a professional setting was alarming enough, but the injury it caused brought the incident into a far more serious light. The victim sustained a deep cut to her head, requiring stitches, and the severity of the injury raised difficult questions about whether Blake's actions were a sudden outburst of stress or a more deliberate attempt to exert control. The courtroom was forced to confront a side of Blake that the public had never seen before, a woman whose drive to maintain her image and authority might lead her to extreme measures. As the testimony spread, media outlets exploded with coverage, dissecting every detail of the incident. Blake, once seen as the epitome of Hollywood elegance, found herself the center of an intensifying scandal. Publicists scrambled to minimize the fallout, but social media was relentless. Hashtags, memes, and endless debates flooded platforms, with many questioning whether Blake's behavior was an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern of manipulation and aggression. As the courtroom proceedings continued, it became clear that this was no longer about a failed business venture. The incident reflected on Blake herself, her decision-making, her temperament, and her character. The altercation, which had taken place in the confines of her now-defunct eco-friendly brand, revealed that what had once appeared as a minor workplace dispute was far more serious. The victim's injuries were not superficial. They were evidence of a potentially deliberate act of violence. Legal experts emphasized that the situation had escalated to a point where charges could be severe, noting that the line between an outburst and intentional harm was dangerously thin. While the cut itself was not life-threatening, the potential for harm indicated that this could be treated as an attempted act of serious violence. Blake's public image, carefully cultivated for years, was suddenly under siege in a way that her previous PR efforts could not contain. Public opinion quickly split. Many viewed Blake's actions as part of a pattern of erratic and emotionally charged behavior, noting that her polished image had masked underlying volatility. The violent nature of the glass-throwing incident seemed to confirm fears that Blake could be prone to extreme reactions when her authority or image was challenged. On the other hand, some argued that the incident was being overblown, framing it as a high-pressure moment that escalated in a way no one could have predicted. Questions swirled. Was this truly an attempt to harm the employee, or was it a singular, uncontrolled outburst in a stressful environment? The debate fueled media coverage, with each side of the argument intensifying the scrutiny on Blake's behavior. The legal ramifications of the incident were significant. If the act were classified as attempted violence, it could fundamentally alter the trajectory of Blake's career and public perception. Experts suggested that the potential charges could carry not only criminal consequences, but also civil liabilities, with multi-million-dollar implications in lawsuits for damages. Beyond the courtroom, the reputational impact was profound. Blake's status as a respected figure in Hollywood, celebrated for her professionalism and public charm, was now at risk of being completely dismantled. The combination of prior testimonies regarding her business practices and this act of alleged aggression painted a troubling portrait. Someone willing to prioritize control, image, and personal authority over ethics and human safety. The incident also highlighted the pressures of fame and power in Hollywood, illustrating how public figures' private actions can have explosive consequences when exposed. Blake's attempt to maintain her persona while managing her brand had been publicly undone, revealing the stark contrast between her curated image and her behavior behind the scenes. The courtroom became a stage where the realities of her conduct could no longer be hidden. Each testimony, each detail of the glass-throwing incident, chipped away at the carefully maintained facade she had spent years constructing. As the case unfolded, it became clear that the implications extended beyond Blake personally. The alleged act of violence raised questions about accountability, workplace safety, and the consequences of unchecked authority in high-profile ventures. For the public, this was a stark reminder that even admired celebrities could be held responsible for actions that crossed ethical and legal boundaries. Blake Lively, once considered a Hollywood darling, now faced a reckoning that could redefine her career. The combination of failed business ventures, aggressive behavior, and the possibility of criminal charges placed her at the center of a controversy that threatened both her professional opportunities and her public standing. In the end, the courtroom revelations forced a confrontation with the truth that no PR strategy could mitigate. Blake's actions, whether seen as a momentary lapse or a calculated attempt at control, left lasting implications for her career, reputation, and legal standing. Hollywood, the media, and the public were all watching, and the consequences of this single incident would reverberate far beyond the walls of the courtroom. The saga of Blake Lively had entered a new, darker phase, one in which her actions, rather than her image, defined her story. The stakes for Blake Lively have never been higher. With the legal proceedings intensifying, the media frenzy is reaching a fever pitch. Public curiosity has reached unprecedented levels, and everyone is watching closely as the narrative surrounding Blake begins to unravel. Each new development draws scrutiny not only to her recent actions, but also to her past career and personal life, as journalists dig for any detail that could explain her behavior. People are questioning whether the glass-throwing incident was an isolated lapse or evidence of a much deeper, more troubling pattern. What drove Blake to this point? Could this mark the collapse of her Hollywood influence? Now that the victim's testimony is part of the official court record, legal analysts are meticulously examining every detail, speculating on the potential outcomes. Blake faces serious charges, including assault, battery, and potentially attempted manslaughter. While experts are divided on what charges are most likely to stick, all agree this case represents a turning point, not only for Lively but also for celebrity accountability in Hollywood. The implications go far beyond one incident. Could this case reshape how stars are held responsible for their actions? Could it influence the way business is conducted behind the scenes in the entertainment industry? The outcome could set a powerful precedent. Blake's defense team faces an uphill battle. Their strategy will likely focus on portraying the incident as an accident, a fluke resulting from the immense stress of running a high-profile business and managing the emotional toll it exacted. They will argue that the wine glass was thrown in frustration, not as a deliberate act of violence, and that Blake's behavior in that moment was uncharacteristic. But with the severity of the injury and the public attention on the case, skepticism is inevitable. Her lawyers will need to convince the court that the act was unintended and mere deflection won't be enough. Meanwhile, public opinion is shifting dramatically. As revelations about Blake's manipulative business practices surface, sympathy is increasingly with the victim. The story of a Hollywood star, once adored, now portrayed as a figure of intimidation and control, has captured widespread attention. Many feel the victim deserves support, and the image of Blake as a graceful, responsible leader is crumbling. What once seemed like a minor workplace dispute has evolved into a character judgment that could determine the future of her career. Blake's legal team is expected to fight fiercely. They will challenge the credibility of the victim, highlight inconsistencies in her account, and suggest that the situation may have been exaggerated. They may argue the victim had motives to misrepresent the facts, painting her as unreliable. This is a familiar strategy in high-profile cases, especially when public perception can influence outcomes. Yet with multiple voices now speaking out about Blake's intense micromanagement and volatile temper, the defense faces an uphill climb. The more the story unfolds, the more difficult it will be to convince the public or the court that this was an isolated incident rather than a revealing glimpse of a deeper pattern of behavior. At this point, the narrative has shifted from a single violent outburst to a broader scrutiny of Blake Lively's character and professional conduct. The public is no longer observing a simple mishap, they are witnessing a reckoning. Every detail of her decisions, her temper, and her leadership style is now open to judgment. As the case progresses, the stakes remain monumental. Blake's Hollywood career, once seemingly untouchable, could face irreversible consequences if the courts and the public perceive a consistent pattern of aggressive and controlling behavior. What was once a personal or business controversy has escalated into a high-profile case with implications for celebrity accountability, workplace ethics, and the image of Hollywood itself. The public fallout from Blake Lively's courtroom drama has been immediate and intense. The judge has emphasized that the case carries far-reaching implications, not just for Blake, but potentially for how celebrity behavior is treated in courts nationwide. Legal analysts suggest that the outcome could set a precedent, holding stars accountable for actions that were previously overlooked or excused. Could this mark the start of a new era in celebrity accountability, where fame no longer shields misconduct? Or is this just an exception in an otherwise protected industry? Only time will tell, but the attention of both Hollywood and the general public is squarely on the trial. As the case unfolds, social media has erupted. Hashtags like #BlakeLivelyFail trend for hours as people dissect every move, every expression, and every word. Opinion is deeply divided. Some criticize her for what appears to be a pattern of emotional volatility and control issues, while others defend her, claiming the controversy is a smear campaign fueled by opportunistic reporting. The online conversation is relentless, and each courtroom update only intensifies the debate. Blake's actions are no longer just a legal issue, they're a battle for her public image. Industry insiders are paying close attention, and their reactions are telling. Major studios and collaborators who once viewed Blake as a valuable asset are reconsidering partnerships. No one wants to take on what could now be perceived as liability. As more details emerge about her alleged temper and questionable business practices, production companies are distancing themselves, wary of the potential fallout. Blake, once seen as Hollywood's golden girl with a charismatic public persona and a string of high-profile roles, is now facing scrutiny that could jeopardize future opportunities. Even former colleagues from the fashion and lifestyle industries are weighing in. Known previously as a meticulous and driven perfectionist, Blake was respected for demanding excellence from those around her. But those same traits now appear, in light of recent testimony, as signs of a controlling personality willing to cross boundaries to maintain dominance. The narrative has shifted dramatically. The Blake Lively who seemed composed, professional, and charismatic in public is now being portrayed as someone capable of extreme measures to protect her image and maintain control, leaving Hollywood to rethink their perceptions and partnerships. The stakes are enormous. Blake's career, public image, and relationships with studios and collaborators are all under intense scrutiny. What was once a carefully curated persona is unraveling before everyone's eyes, and the consequences may be long-lasting. The combination of court testimony, media coverage, and insider revelations has cast her in a new light, one that challenges the image she has spent years building. Every move she makes from here on out will be examined, and the industry is watching closely to see how far this fallout will go. The perception of Blake Lively, once a Hollywood darling, has shifted dramatically in the wake of her courtroom collapse. Calls for a full-scale investigation into her business dealings are gaining traction. This case is no longer just about her sudden outburst in court. It's about the legacy she's built and whether everything she touched has been shaped by manipulation and self-interest. The fall of her eco-friendly brand, once celebrated as a hallmark of her vision, may be just the tip of the iceberg. Critics and industry insiders are now scrutinizing every aspect of her business empire, from fashion ventures to high-profile partnerships. What once seemed like smart PR moves and thoughtful investments is now being questioned as potential facades designed to elevate her status while sidelining the interests of others. The victim's testimony has opened a floodgate of accusations, suggesting that Blake's aggressive and controlling behavior was not limited to this one incident. Former employees, collaborators, and associates have begun to speak out, revealing a pattern of micromanagement, intimidation, and ruthless decision-making. The courtroom revelations suggest that Blake's temper and pursuit of control may have been a recurring factor in her professional life. Observers are asking whether this is finally the reckoning for someone who was once seen as untouchable. The consequences of these allegations stretch beyond legal implications. They threaten to erode Blake's carefully curated public image and her standing within Hollywood. Her collapse in court wasn't just a legal defeat, it was a deeply personal crisis. For years, Blake cultivated an image of grace, elegance, and strength, earning admiration from fans and colleagues alike. But the courtroom exposure has left her vulnerable. The combination of explosive testimony and intense media scrutiny has taken a significant toll on her mental and emotional well-being. Psychological experts following the case suggest that her public breakdown may only reveal a fraction of the stress she is under. The courtroom incident, paired with mounting allegations, appears to be pushing Blake to her limits, cracking the facade of composure she worked so hard to maintain. Friends and family have reportedly noticed changes in her behavior. Blake has become more withdrawn, retreating from public life and isolating herself to cope with the ongoing pressure. The legal battle is no longer just about a business failure or a courtroom case. It has evolved into a crisis of identity. Public perception has shifted dramatically. Those who once admired her now scrutinize her actions with suspicion, leaving Blake to navigate the overwhelming weight of media attention, public judgment, and personal reflection. Reports indicate that the strain has affected her physically and mentally. She is losing sleep, struggling with health issues, and facing a profound sense of anxiety about the future. Blake Lively, once a symbol of Hollywood success and composure, now appears as a shadow of her former self. Her publicists are frantically attempting to control the narrative, but each new leak or testimony only amplifies the damage. Her carefully crafted image is eroding daily, and it's increasingly difficult to see a path back to her former status. The cracks in her persona are visible to the public, and rebuilding trust and credibility seems more challenging than ever. Hollywood, a place that once celebrated her meticulously curated charm, is now reconsidering her reliability and the risks of working with someone whose behavior has been publicly questioned. This courtroom drama has transformed Blake Lively from a celebrated starlet into a figure of controversy. The battle is no longer solely about her career. It is about her identity, her legacy, and whether she can recover from the cumulative fallout of legal, professional, and personal scrutiny. The scrutiny she faces is comprehensive, extending from courtroom testimony to social media commentary, and from public perception to private insider accounts. Each revelation chips away at the image of the poised, controlled actress that Hollywood once adored. The outcome of this trial could reshape how she is viewed for years to come, and potentially influence how celebrity accountability is perceived more broadly in the entertainment industry. In the end, Blake Lively's legal struggles are about more than courtroom victory or defeat. They represent a profound personal reckoning. Her image, meticulously constructed over years, is being dismantled piece by piece in public view. She is no longer just a Hollywood starlet. She is a woman grappling with the consequences of her decisions, under scrutiny from the courts, the media, and the public alike. The road ahead is uncertain. Whether she can rebuild her career or reclaim her public image remains unknown, as the trial continues to expose the vulnerabilities behind her polished exterior and the extent to which her professional and personal life are intertwined with this escalating crisis.